Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DePINed Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. I am thrilled to be here with Michail, who is CEO and co-founder of Roam. Roam is one of the many projects attacking the telecom space. I think that telecom is probably one of the richest targets for the DePIN kind of ecosystem, and where we've seen both the earliest project or one of the earliest projects, Helium, and then kind of a wealth of other initiatives and projects attacking and addressing different parts of this enormously complex and huge world. So with that, a warm welcome to Michail.
Thank you, Tom. And greetings to all our listeners. Are you going to view the videos or just listening?
Yep.
So what was
There's YouTube is a channel. That's
excellent?
why we're doing it.
Listeners and viewers. So it's great to be here and to discuss the curious animal we call DePIN also in this context. So let's kick it off and let's have a great session together.
Well, fantastic. Well, first, why don't you just kick it off right away and tell us about Roam? Tell us about exactly what you're doing in the telecom space.
Yeah, so I realize that most of the people would like to hear the definition of us describing in the vision and not actually what we do now. So let me try it with this podcast to describe where you want to be and describe the steps what we are taking to reach there. So imagine in 5 years you'll be able to select the best network with the best service that you want at the best price, and then you could have a guarantee that this is the actual best you could get. And this is our proposal. We would like to enable users to be in full control of who connects them to the internet, what happens with this connection, what kind of data is being collected, where it goes. And this is actually our vision. So we would like us to become a mobile network operator, and probably can put something like a virtual there, because the evolution of mobile network has been that the actual infrastructure, so all the towers, and all the hardware associated, so the antennas, base station, cables, is becoming commoditized. It's becoming a utility. Same as most of the people don't care what cables are the one to connect their house or their apartment to the electricity grid, or you don't care what kind of pipes connect to the water network. In the future, people would not care actually what pipes connect you to the internet, but they will care what kind of service provider helps you have the best connection for your purpose. So you can switch between operators based on your requirements, needs, speed, or price sensitivity. So how we want to go there? We want to go there by enabling then people to know first what network is the best for me, and then to be able to switch to that network and to have an actual capability to understand the network performance and price rates. And the first step we go in this direction, and what you can download now on the Google or the Play Store, is to download Roam app, connect it, and then you could see your current network operator, what kind of a service do they provide to you. You could see the actual quality and the performance of the network. You could see for the last calendar month what was the promise and what was given. So you could see what was the average and the maximum speed. And then you can actually ask yourself, why am I paying 200 megabits per second if I'm getting not 80, but 8 as an average? And this is actually what we have seen across the world now. They're getting like 5% of what you've been promised. So that's what we do now. But as I mentioned, we want to enable people in the future to be in full control of the service and how they actually consume it, and who do they give the actual value to, and how do they actually this value get distributed across the value chain.
Interesting. Okay, well, listen, that sounds useful. I think we can have a conversation about how frequently consumers will want to test that and to check, or is it a set it and forget it? That's a lot of what we do, right? With cable, with telcos, with a lot of things you set and forget. You're not constantly checking. But to be fair, once you're figuring out what makes the most sense, that I certainly think can happen. But before we get to the use of it, what is the DePIN component to it, and how does what you're doing enable that that future to arrive?
It's a great question, and I like to share my my 5 cents about it. So what is the DePIN in general for me? As my experience is both telco and the last 10 years in Internet of Things technology. So what I think of DePIN is a cloud compute, or basically cloud, which of course contains compute, network, and storage, plus let's call it IoT technology, which for a lot of people means being able to collect, manage, share, analyze sensor data. And the missing component, because these were two were existing for again 15 years at least now, is the blockchain technology, which enables the traceability, which enables fair value distribution, if there is such a thing, but let's use it for now, which enables also participation in the project, same as the open source project allow participation, but this to be more streamlined, because if the project creates value, you could also be part of the value distribution. So all this combined, so again, cloud plus IoT plus blockchain constitutes for me a DePIN, so a description of the whole space. And our project Chrome actually matches more or less all these components. So the sensor data is coming from the phone. This is the IoT technology. The actual analytics of the data will have to be done in a different way, but definitely the component that we're using now for majority of the data is now running in a cloud, and we want to decentralize this in the future. So when the blockchain technology enables full decentralization of big data analytics with small data records, then we will definitely move everything on chain and to become fully decentralized. And the blockchain, of course, is the missing component which enables, or which is the disruptive part, especially in the telco part, because it enables you as a user to be part of the whole project, to own a piece of the value, and to own also the understanding where this data went and what value has been created. And this transparency or traceability, I believe, is a key part of the whole DePIN technology, which enables the Web3 business model, which again is an evolution of the platform model, which now is able to finally being implemented. So sorry for the long description. Hope it's okay.
Yeah, what I guess I would say is first on the DePIN definition, tell me what you think of this. I mean, I think I incorporate a lot of what you're saying, but it's effectively crowdsourced physical infrastructure that is bound in a common network that is incented and secured by crypto economics, and it's providing a service. So the last piece of a useful service, which sort of knocks out like a Bitcoin miner, for example. But crowdsourced physical infrastructure in a common network, incented and secured by crypto economics. I think that, of which obviously telco pieces are one, cloud is another, and you can then differentiate between digital DePIN and more physical DePIN, and physical DePIN being like a Hive Mapper or Demo, those versus Filecoin, Arweave, Fluence, Aether on the digital side. And then telco is its own subcategory as well, with a ton of things that kind of fit on the physical side, like maybe a Helium, or maybe you guys a little bit more virtual. But I want to dig into exactly what happens, because you mentioned phone, but I think people want to know exactly how does Roam work. What do I need to? What device am I using? What does that device get? What does that device do? And how does that work?
It's a good discussion actually. I like your description. Um, and for me, this is actually an interesting concept, because what I'm using DePIN for, I'm using it as a technology description. I think you're using it more also as a system model, which is also correct. And I think those has their own space and recourse to discuss. I think what especially I like on the DePIN in your model is the Web3 description of the value generation and value distribution. And again, I think the example is that Web1 was you have a portal, and then from the portal you buy services like an online bookstore, Amazon. And then Web2 was about, I create a service and use it for free, so the Google or the Facebook. But then you pay for it in a different way that they don't tell you. So I monetize on you. And Web3 is a story that everything is traceable. So I generate value, and then when this value is monetized, the one that originated the value, that owns a piece of it, will get recognized. So I think that's the business side or the platform model of the Web3, which I especially like. So for me, the whole concept was inspired by this thing. And maybe that's why what we're describing as a Roam system now is exactly following that. So basically, the the app that we're now downloading, it's a bit dark, but this is what the app does. So it shows you the quality and the performance of the mobile network. So users can download it now on the Google Play Store for the Android. And every time this changes all these technical parameters about which network I'm connected to, in this case, this is Telia in Finland, and which cell I'm connected to, and what is the strength of the cell, and what is the quality of the cell, and what are the nearby cells. So this people don't care about this typically, until they start to care. So if you see that there is no nearby cell, this would mean that there is no spare capacity. So as long as there are more people coming, then network will disappear. Or as long as the frequency is very low, also means that there is no capacity for higher speed and so forth. But basically, this data is useful for somebody else, and this somebody else is the one to provide you the service. So they will be interested to collect this data, and they're actually buying it from the Web2 world, the people that give you free app and free service. And what we are saying is the other way around. So, I mean, don't just give it for free. So be in control of your data. And when somebody then monetizes on your data, be part of the community that actually can create something with this value. Again, this is what we do now. We enable the people to be in control, or to understand what is happening with their phone sensor data. So in this case, the most important one is the collection of mobile network performance and quality. And in the future, when we actually create or when we monetize on the services or on the product, or the analytics product, people will be able to get a fair proportionate reward of the contribution. Does this answer your question, actually, Tom?
Well, sort of. I mean, I understand you download an app and that tells you the speed and the connectivity you have. But what's the next step there?
That's it. So the app runs in the background, and I mean, you can think about it as a
right. But how do you switch, or what are your options? You mentioned in the future you want to switch. So I download an app, grasp that, get data, grasp that. But then that's an application. I don't see how that's a network, right? Like where does that, what do I do with that information now?
what do you do as a user, or what does the system does with this information? You as a user now can move 10 meters left or right, or go to the next room and have a better connection to the internet. That's what you can see now. That's a direct utility. And the other utilities that you can download for the last calendar month, and to see what was the actual average speed that you had, which nobody tells you about it. And then you can complain. I mean, am I getting what I'm paying for or not? Then in the future, we will be able to give you a referral code to say that in the places that you most often using the service, if you switch to operator XYZ from your current operator, then you'll be able to have better service and better price. So basically they can give you a discount. And then on top of it, if you switch, because they actually give this kind of a referral fee for new customers, we share with you the referral fee. So also you get the bonus when you switch, and then you can get additional discount. And then in the next step is that we're going to give you an option to join Roam network, and then we can do this switching automatically for you. So we'll be able to switch you so that your connection automatically goes to the best network that provides you the service, so the connectivity and the best rate, what we want to get. That will be the next step. Imagine having your only the agent that monitors the connection for you all the time and gives you the recommendation which one to use. So I mean that will be the vision that we want to go.
Fair enough, and I get that, but I guess right now there's nothing really DePIN about it. It's an application on your phone, and it's a telco related application, but there's no physical. It's telling you information about a physical infrastructure network, which is your service, but you're not using it for anything. There's no distinction between that and an app which tells me the weather, or which tells me, calls a taxi for me, right? Like it's an application. And when you actually have like if the term DePIN didn't exist, your application would just be called an app, right? I don't know what makes it DePIN. When you have your own network, then you can shift your network, and that's fine. But then that's your network. That's not a decentralized network at all, right? Like where is it? That's then your network that people would switch to. And before that, it's a referral base. Again, great, useful, may add a lot of value, but none of these strike me as decentralized physical infrastructure networks.
What is decentralized is a sensor network. Like from that example, none of the sensor networks out there will be called sensor network.
Well, no,
the phone is the sensor network.
No, but here's the distinction. So, like, pick a GeoNet. That's a sensor network, right? But they're actually selling to customers who are using all those sensors. You're not selling to any customers, right? Your guy looks at the app, it's a one app, it's a one user, unless I'm making it wrong, and you're selling all the data to somebody else. Maybe there's value in all this sensor data you're getting, which starts to change things a little bit. But to me, where's the value of the network here?
But okay, then we miss the point. So the data that you collect as a phone has value, and it already has value in the Web 2 world. So there are apps that collect this data in your phone without you knowing it. Every app in your phone that has access to the telephony API collects this data, like Okla, OpenSignal. They actually collect this data and they sell it to a paying customer without your understanding, without your full consent and traceability. That's the actual sensor data that we change the narrative and tell that it's your data, dear user. You should be aware of it. So why don't you have an actual participation in the system, in the network that collects this data and that creates a viable product out of it?
So that makes a total difference. So now you're sensing data and you're monetizing people's data for them effectively. And then presumably you're sharing some of that or all of that monetization with them. Is that fair?
Correct. Yes, that's the
Got
first
it.
step that we want to go in this direction. So we want to enable a community of people that are aware what happens with their connection to the internet. And when this has value, they have to be represented. And when actually there is a value created and sold to a paying customer, they'll get proportionate contribution. So if you participate more, you should get more, right? That's the actual value. And that's why we've been very careful how we communicate the whole process, because this data has value, but it's not tens of dollars per day like some projects have been quoting about it. This is absolutely not existing as a value, right? And this is actually part of the problem in a lot of the projects, that they create unrealistic expectations, because then the actual product of the system is not the actual service of the system, but is the unrealistic expectation that new users should come and they should buy a hardware, and this hardware will have some value on chain because we just sold it. But then if you ask where is the actual product that you sell to a non-chain users, to the actual enterprise, then a lot of projects will have difficulties to explain. That's why I think we are a DePIN in that sense, that we're actually creating value from sensors and we sell it to an enterprise customer and not to the same users that originally bought our
Yes.
hardware. Because that's why we actually
Totally
don't want
agree.
to sell hardware, because you actually have the hardware, and most of the
Yep.
project would be difficult to explain why you need to have extra hardware if it's already there. So, and that's not a good direction that the whole industry is going, I think, from our side, from the DePIN side.
Well, no, but it also depends also on the value of the data or service that hardware provides. And so if the data that you're collecting is super valuable and interesting, like maybe a helium hotspot, then maybe you can justify buying or installing that hardware. But if you have an existing phone, then that seems like a far lower hurdle to getting people on the network. Help
Exactly.
me.
So that's the point. So,
Well, no. So help me understand then how you think about value on this. And obviously, if the cost as a consumer to me is downloading an app, that cost is about whatever it is, a couple minutes of my time, right? And then presumably this application runs in the background and sends data, and I get rewarded, effectively in perpetuity for sharing this data, right?
yes.
And where do you and so let's talk then may as well talk about how that shifts and head into token economics. So how's the reward system work when you get revenue? Do you burn tokens? Like how does that whole I know that you don't have a token launched yet, but I think you've started the architecture of it. So
Yes.
how does that work?
Yeah. So how it works is that your device contributes the actual measurement. We are validating it, or we are planning to validate it with a super user type of devices, which would then be checking for particular very precise locations. And we are planning collaboration with some project in this space, that this data has been correct and not. And for that, the validators will need to stake their reputation points, which are the current points you have in the system, and the actual future planned ROM tokens. And then once this data has been validated is correct, then the data will be released to the analytics engine that, based on the actual type of customer, will create the right insights. And we are going to check if you as a user has marked this data to be available for the type of customers to buy it. So if you don't want this data to be available for local regulators, then we could say, no, I don't want it. I don't want marketing companies to have access to it. I would like only mobile network operators, or even I would like only DePIN customers to have access to it. So I would like to check my T-Mobile subscription and enable only Helium, for example, to get it into and to build coverage hotspots in area which T-Mobile does not have the coverage. Then we're going to convert this fiat payments, because typically those enterprise customers pay in fiat. It would be far-fetched to think that most of the municipality, cities, regulators, enterprise customers will be paying in crypto anytime soon. And then I will not use the term burn. We'll be putting it in a long-term storage. That's what our legal counsels have now been recommended to consider, so that burning is not a good mechanism to describe what you do with tokens, even though it's typically the model is called deflationary burn and mint type of model, but let's call it storage, long-term storage. And then we're going to reward back the users for their contributions. And the actual multiplier in the system is the reputation multiplier. We want to enable good users in the system and good participants to participate more, and we want to be able to penalize or not reward not system supportive behavior. So that's why users will have an option to create reputation multipliers using the points and as a reputation identifier, and also the token as a staking requirement, so that they can unlock different missions. Because in our world, when you actually sell to an enterprise customer, you need to be able to deliver the service that you commit to, meaning that if somebody expects 100 people to be tonight at the central railway station, then we need to make sure that this service is going to be delivered, because it will have certain time critical element of it, and that's why we have its premium value. And to do that, we will need people to actually create a pool and stake those reputation points and stake the actual token, so that they have an incentive to be there and to deliver in time the service. So perhaps that's a short summary of what we plan to do in this space. But again, this is work in motion, so we still have to be fully compliant to all the regulations. And yeah, this is also something that we are still working as a team.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, there's a whole number of buy and burn models out there, from Render, Helium. I mean, another big projects, some of which are in the US. So I'm surprised that's not, your attorneys don't find that compliant, but maybe there's an updated version of it. But leaving that aside, help people understand the scale of this market. Like, when you think about the number of users you'd like to have sharing data, and then the amount of revenue you think that data can generate. Like, I have no idea. I'm sure most people listening or watching have no conception of what this is worth. So where are you trying to go in terms of phone, in terms of downloads, and then in terms of, pick your number, annual revenue of this data?
Yeah, so let's try to be descriptive as much as we can. So this market, only the market of collecting mobile network performance data by public numbers, because most of the companies even have public reports, is worth about 250 million per year ARR. And this is only the market of selling this data to likes of mobile network operators. Again, the T-Mobiles and the Deutsche and the Vodafones of the world. So that's this market. So this excludes all this additional value that you can create by correlating this data, at least mobile network performance data, with weather data, so that you can create a more accurate weather map and changes in the microclimate, or create a different map for people movement inside areas like cities. I mean, people movement, not cars or not something else, right? Or create information about what kind of performance has to be created, so that users can actually access certain services in place and time. So if you're on a stadium or in places that have a large concentration of people in a period of time, what happens with my service there? Or even if you have an enterprise service that needs to provide video surveillance in an area, and something doesn't work. So how do I know as a service company, is it the connectivity that failed, or is it the camera that failed, or is it the cloud compute end that fails, or something else? So that's the basic use case. So that's why we are very bullish that this data has intrinsic high value, because even the first use case is already quite significant potential, which again, excluding the additional revenue streams and including even the loyalty and retention or affiliate marketing, monetization is exceeding 250 million per year. So your data that you don't know that is being collected already generates value for Web 2 players. Maybe that's the
And
short summary here.
is that globally or is that US?
This is globally, so. This is
Globally.
globally.
And that's a big market, right? That's a lot of carriers all over the world. So in order to, you tell me, how much of that do you expect to be accessible to you, right? To be accessible to that, you probably need to have, you need X number of downloads in Y number of markets. I got to imagine US, Europe are the most largest, and you probably have, I don't know, Japan, parts of Asia being another kind of sizable market. Maybe South America is big too. I'm not sure. So where are you targeting different geographies, and how many downloads do you need to have to put a geography online, or to actually start to target and access a material part of that revenue?
Yeah, so our initial assumption is that we needed to have 1 to 3%. What we realize is that we are actually up to 100 times more efficient than the Web 2 players, meaning that statistically, if you run the Oklo, the speed test app on the phone, how often do you actually run it? And that's a funny, how often do you actually need to run it? So then still they have a lot of, that's why they have a lot of users. What we have seen is that in the markets that we are already operating, and again, 178 countries, what we need is to have 10 to 100 times less people running the app on the phone, because they already have a lot of interactivity and they move around and they keep the app running 24/7. So from that point of view, our forecast is that if you reach 5 million people in the next 5 years, we will be able to have enough data not only to cover the data monetization market, but to efficiently go into the next step, which is again the create a loyalty and retention tool, and to move into the mobile virtual network operator business. So to be able to provide the users with the best service per local markets.
Really interesting. So 5 million, it's a big number, but it's a very small percentage, but that gives you access to, I'm going to guess, the vast majority of that revenue. Question I have for you is, this is a phone app. There's other DePIN projects focused, or that collect data on phones. And so do you see a world where the same million people have 5 different or 10 different DePIN apps on their phone? Or is there a master app that people download and it actually downloads all the others for you, or everything is integrated into one? I mean, right, like, because you guys are one, there's Ambient Network, which is another. There's a whole list, right, that do different things that are all phone sensor based. And as phones become more and more advanced, right, there's more and more sensors, more and more stuff you can do. So I'm kind of curious, how do you see, are there partnerships you do? You share data with one phone app and they download and you download, you double your user base by partnering because you're not competitive? I mean, how do you think about this?
My background and experience is most from the Web 2 world. So, I jumped into the Web 3 with this project full on about 2 years ago. But if you look at the best examples in the Web 2 world, or in the web world, of course, merger acquisitions, any type of activities around that sounds very logical. Next thing, of course, is to go completely Web3 way, to create a good decentralized marketplace to share data. Again, sounds good, but so far in the Web3 there is no such pronounced player, but this could be a good direction to go. But even if you step one line back, and if you look at how many browsers do you have even on your compute system, on your laptop, most people have probably a couple, and this is still okay. So probably in the future there will be couple of apps, super user app that collect this kind of sensor data, and probably the success will be who can create the best user experience and to create the best value for the users for you to be worth to keep the app. I think the time of the airdrop hunters probably soon will be over, because I mean there is not just enough value just to claim that you have a system and then not able to deliver it in time. But yeah, I mean it will be an interesting world in which this will consolidate. So if you ask me when this would happen, it's a bit unclear. Maybe things work faster in Web3, but maybe not.
Maybe, but as an example, there's a group called Nodal. I think they are the most used network out there, right? There's something like 1 million downloads, some number in that vicinity, maybe more, and a lot of active users. To me, if you're able to get them, all those users, or partner with them, where those users download yours and vice versa, you each have the potential. You're right. You just dramatically expanded your network. And again, I don't, right. So you have an advantage, I guess what I'm trying to say, as a phone-based app, because there's others and there are easy ways to accelerate deployment versus just direct to consumer marketing. And other DePIN projects like us, we don't have that advantage, right? We need people who have CPUs. Helium's got to get people to go put things in there, whatever. Hive Mapper's got to get mapped, the devices in cars, etc. You guys have an advantage because everyone has phones and a bunch of other DePIN projects already have people doing it, and you're not competitive with them at all. And that to me is a pretty cool opportunity and a shortcut to scale potentially.
I agree fully. So this is part of our collaboration calendar. So we're going to start announcing now. So basically end of this month, we're going to start partnering or announcing the partnership. We're already doing it with some of the focused on mobile device projects. Let's put it this way. I mean, if you think of it, it's quite logical, right? So I think one of the evolution of any business models would be specialization, right? We are specialized in the mobile network, not the Wi-Fi, but the actual mobile networks, and we can become a layer that can enable any system, any app that wants to run compute and storage in the phone to have a predictable connectivity layer. And same as Grass is being listed as one of the layers on the compute platform for stationary or for data centers. So practically for us, it makes sense to partner with anybody into the so-called fog compute, which is a good term now that can consider the smartphones as being a fog compute nodes. So running not just in the cloud, but in the fog, so closer to the ground. And they can run compute tasks, but if you cannot run compute tasks on your phone without having predictable connectivity, then it becomes a very batch processing activity. So we can become that layer. So this would be a nice and very logical step for us to do and to continue working and growing in this direction.
I mean, that adds a whole nother value proposition to the network and everything else, which is terrific. You referenced your background, a minute ago. Let's take a step back and I like to do things backwards, right? You start with a project, go to most people start with the person and tell the story. I wanted to go the other way. So let's rewind to the beginning and talk about Michail and your background. I know you've worked at Nokia, and so it sounds like you've got a pretty perfect background for what you're doing, but could you get into that a little bit, please?
My career has been in telecom. So, I mean, I joined at the end of the golden age of telecom, which ended about year 2000. Why it was golden? It was like the current Web3 world. So when there was so much value flowing from different type of customers, where the bars were running an open credit card, at the event. So this was the days when the executives of the telco companies were just saying we're printing money, because essentially they were not having enough capacity to connect all the users that wanted to buy a not a smartphone, sorry, a phone, right? A mobile phone. Those were the days where a SIM card in Europe, in some places, was worth 50 or 100 euros. You just had to pay for the activation service, right? Not for the actual monthly subscription. You had to pay in a even in markets like in Central and East Europe, you had to pay 100 euros just to get the SIM card. So I joined at the end of this golden age. I graduated university in 2000, and then I was given an option to work for Nokia in Finland or for Ericsson in Hungary in a slightly different role. So I chose the more exotic location, which for me was Finland. And I moved from Bulgaria to Finland actually to work for Nokia here. And in the first 7 years or 6 years of my career, I traveled the world helping Nokia customers build better networks. So I was actually in Hong Kong building the first 3G networks. I was in UK building the first 3G network. It was the same customer. It was Hutchison. I think I was traveled about 45 offices of Nokia in the world, training mobile network operators to use a packet data network. So basically the core component of the mobile network and how to connect. And then I moved across a couple of other positions. I ended up again in Nokia. At that time, it was called Nokia Siemens Networks, on the edge of the cloud. So this was 2010, where telcos and the large enterprise were thinking, what shall we do with this cloud? That became a technology there. And we actually created the first cloud native IoT platform. At that time, it was called machine-to-machine platform. Now it's called cloud. And I've been dealing with the convergence of mobile networks and cloud, and especially in the Internet of Things space since then, since 2010. So my last positions in Nokia was actually working in the IoT for utility spectrum, and also working with before that with unlicensed IoT connectivity and license in the low power wide area network. So that's what got me into the Helium. Or actually, this is how I met Helium, because we were actually building the network for Comcast in the US. So Comcast, the largest cable operator, wanted to build IoT network, and they were using, or they're planning to use the unlicensed spectrum of LoRaWAN in the US. So the ISM band, which you can use without special permission. And then they built network in 3 cities. So actually, I sold them in my team. We sold them the infrastructure and the services for building the system. And then Comcast gave up. So Comcast, I mean, one of the most prosperous cable operator in the world, gave up on building nationwide coverage in the US because it was cost prohibitive. And what was my surprise, and I guess the rest of the community, when I think 1 or 2 years later, Helium came around and they built the largest network not only in the US but in the world without any investment in infrastructure, so capex, so basic capital expenditure, nor any investment in operational expenditure. And on top of it, they were even making profit while they're building the network, which was unheard of. And that for me was the aha moment in the whole Web3 space, because I was saying, wow, if you can actually enable people to become a community of understanding what is happening, and they'll be willing to invest money and time for that, of course you can build something very valuable. And of course the problem was then that the actual promise that was given, that the value of the transaction will be so high and the value of the product will be so high, so the token has to be I think it was $45-50 was never sustainable. So this was not the equilibrium price of the Helium token, and then it crashed down. I think now it's at the equilibrium price, so the system does create a value which is actually fully paid.
They're different
But my idea was
equilibriums.
that, how about if you go, yes, exactly, different equilibrium. So it's a clearly example that equilibrium concept does work in the token engineering. But for me, this was an actual aha moment. So I thought, okay, how about we build that in the human networks, not in the IoT networks, which was the 4G and even 5G, because the problem in the 5G network that they're not growing, and they're not growing because it's difficult to build those network. And even if you build them, which is very expensive, how do you keep people in the network? Because this is also a very expensive exercise. And if you actually can use that logic that Helium had for the 5G type of network, this would be great. I mean, it could help people get better connected, even places without data connection, even 4G can get connected. But then the regulatory framework of mobile networks globally is so complex, and it requires so much additional work and investment, that this is actually prohibitive. So that's why even Helium cannot deliver any of that services outside of US. They can only do Wi-Fi, right? Which they do now in Mexico, yes, maybe Canada. And the actual possibility is there. We have actually made a prototype originally in Rome when we started. We actually prototyped how to build such decentralized network, or actually networks of network, using fully decentralized 4G, 5G base station, mobile core, and management system. And then we actually discussed even with carriers in Europe about building this for them. This is the evolution of a standard in mobile networks called active infrastructure sharing. But then the answer was that yes, but maybe not now. So basically, the carriers were not really interested to continue in this direction. So that's why we said, okay, so let's go with this thing that they cannot say no to, because this is the actual story of creating the community first. And this is how we evolve the story into the Rome network with the actual data ownership, and then the value of the users, and the users joining the community and creating a loyal community after that.
Well, terrific, and I miss, and Helium, I think, has been the inspiration for many, many projects. They're one of the first projects I was aware of, and I actually built a tiny little company to deploy routers in Mexico, actually. So this was a little while ago. So it was worked for a little while. But which leads me to the question of, besides Helium, are there other projects that you either took inspiration from or pay close attention to and think are doing interesting things in the DePIN space?
Um, I would say from the recent project that we met, we spoke to Mike, another Mike from GuildNet. I think they have the right combination of experience, industry expertise. I mean, they know what they're talking about, and also founders to product fit, which is a funny name. So not just product market fit, but founders to product fit. So I would say also we've been looking at their white papers on actual tokenomics and how they actually create value on chain. So actually, this is a solid example of things done right. Of course, we've been looking at all the other sensor projects around. So I think Wingbits is a good example. It's actually a great example of an area which most people do not understand, because you would think that airplane traffic is the most heavily regulated traffic in the world, and you would think that there is no need for extra measurement or extra sensors there, and still there is an option for that. So this was an inspiration that we have to explain better to users what we are doing, because if Wingbits can actually create user traction in an area so obscure, which people probably don't care at all about, so how about we create something in an area that everybody touches every day? I mean, I think probably most people spend more time on their phone than they talk to anybody else around them. And of course, how you connect to the internet probably is important for those people, not even talking about professional people. And we actually talked to demo guys in the past. So one of our founders, so Streamer Network, actually has been also quite connected to the demo guys in the past. So we actually I met for the first time with them in Austin, in Texas, this year on the what was the name? Consensus. So it was a good discussion. So basically, it shows how a problem that was tackled a long time ago in IoT world. I think this was one of the first projects that I had even in Nokia when we were doing connected car. And this was again cost prohibitive and traction prohibitive, because nobody wanted to put a dongle in their car without any incentive. So the technology was there, it was solid, it was existing, but nobody wanted to do it. And then came a demo which actually turned it the other way around. So not forcing you to do it, but giving incentive to do it. So changing the model to have an incentive rather than obligation, and then it took off, right? So that was also a good inspiration for us to start the whole process.
Terrific. Well, those are great projects. I've had all of them on the podcast except for one. So I've got one. I got still have some work to do. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, love the projects. I think Mike and GeoNet's great. All those guys have also spoken at our DePIN days as well. So know those projects well. Well, listen, I think it's super interesting what you're doing, and I think you're creating. It's what I love about DePIN. You sort of reference this a little bit, is that you're taking your effectively sharing value with people who are already generating it but don't even know they are, and that to me is a pretty cool thing that DePIN is kind of uniquely positioned to do. And so if you're able, pick a number, to generate 10, 20 million bucks, 10%, right, of that global market in buy, and let's just not call, still call it buy burn concept, that's still a pretty powerful element. And if you add fog compute on top of that, there's real potential for this. I can see kind of really a really interesting story if you've got that kind of constant demand for a token every year, plus other services and applications on top of it. So super exciting. I'm thrilled to have you on, and give people a way to follow you, to follow Rome. How do they stay involved? Most importantly, how do they download the application so they can get involved?
Yeah. So before I answer the last question, so I like your description of the change of narrative for the DePIN, that you actually made aware of things that maybe you didn't care about, because actually in our case your phone is collecting all the time this data actually. So basically this data is made available to every single app that you click without knowing yes to the actual permissions. So if you see on your phone, to anybody of you listen, if you see on your phone any app that has a telephony API or call service access, I mean, this is not used to make calls. I mean, none of the actual apps in your phone except the telephony app is using it. This is actually used to collect data without you knowing, and without you able to know where this data goes and what happens with it. So that's the reality of the fact, right? That's the hidden secret, the dark secret of your phones. And with us, you can download the app on Google Play. Soon we're going to have on iOS, but now it's on Google Play. It's called Roam app. Or you can just go to our website, so roamnetwork.xyz or roamdao.network, whatever you remember, and then follow the download link from there. We are planning a major update of the app and the website to actually reflect our new branding and a bit more focused approach to what we do. So we're going to show exact value and exact also the map of the coverage, and also to link to the integration that we're having now with the peak. So they will be live in 1 week. So the mainnet, we are one of the lighthouse projects on peak. So stay tuned also for that updates. But again, to answer the question, so roamnetwork.xyz or on the Google Play Roam app as a download.
Terrific. Well, hope some of these listeners and viewers download the app, get involved, and start getting value for the data that you're already sharing.